Welcome to War Bios, where we delve into the most pivotal conflicts in history. Today, we're going to explore one of the most iconic battles in American history, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which marked the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. This battle was a watershed moment in American history, pitting the British Army against the Massachusetts militia in a conflict that would decide the fate of a nation. As we journey back in time to the mid-18th century, we find ourselves in the midst of a complex web of colonial politics, economic tensions, and social unrest. The British government had imposed a series of taxes on its American colonies, including the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Townshend Acts, which led to growing resentment among the colonists. The Proclamation of 1763, which prohibited American settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains, further fueled the flames of discontent. In Massachusetts, the epicenter of colonial resistance, a group of patriots known as the Sons of Liberty had been organizing protests and boycotts against British rule. Led by men like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and James Otis, these radicals were determined to defend their rights as Englishmen and resist the imposition of taxes without representation. As tensions escalated, the British government responded with force, deploying troops to Boston in 1768 to quell the growing unrest. The occupation of Boston by British soldiers led to a series of confrontations, including the Boston Massacre in 1770, which further galvanized public opinion against the British. In the years leading up to the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the Massachusetts militia had been training in secret, using tactics developed by the Prussian military strategist Frederick the Great. These militiamen were primarily farmers, merchants, and artisans who had never seen combat before, but they were determined to defend their homes and their way of life. The town of Lexington, with its population of around 700 people, was a small but strategic location that controlled access to Concord. The Old North Bridge, which spanned the Concord River, was a crucial crossing point for both armies, and it would play a pivotal role in the upcoming battle. As the British Army began to mobilize, the colonists were aware that they had to act quickly to defend their supplies and their territory. On April 18, 1775, General Thomas Gage, the British commander-in-chief, ordered a contingent of around 700 troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, to march on Concord and seize the colonial arsenal. The British Army set out under the cover of darkness, hoping to catch the colonists off guard. But the colonists were not unaware of the British plans, and they had already begun to prepare for the impending battle. As we explore the earliest history of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, we find ourselves in the midst of a complex web of intrigue, strategy, and chance encounters. The fate of a nation hung in the balance as two armies, each with its own unique culture and motivations, prepared to clash in a conflict that would decide the course of American history. The stage was set for a battle that would ignite a revolution, forge a nation, and forever change the face of warfare. As the British troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, approached Lexington's Old North Bridge, they were met with a group of about 70 militiamen who had gathered on the town's common to confront the advancing army. The atmosphere was tense, with both sides aware that the consequences of their actions would be far-reaching. Captain John Parker, the leader of the Lexington militia, ordered his men to stand their ground but not to fire unless fired upon. The British troops, with their red coats and polished muskets, presented a formidable sight, but the militiamen held firm, refusing to back down. The British commander, Major Thomas Pitcairn, shouted for the colonists to disperse, but they remained steadfast, determined to defend their rights and their territory. In the chaos that followed, a shot rang out, and the battle began. The fighting at Lexington's Old North Bridge was intense but brief, with the British troops quickly overpowering the outnumbered militiamen. However, as the British continued on to Concord, they were met with increasingly fierce resistance from the colonists, who had been alerted to the British advance by Paul Revere and other messengers. At the Old North Bridge in Concord, the British troops encountered a larger and more determined group of militiamen who had assembled to defend their town and their supplies. The fighting was fierce, with both sides suffering casualties, but the colonists ultimately emerged victorious, forcing the British to retreat back to Boston. As we reflect on the events of April 19, 1775, it's clear that this was a day of great courage and sacrifice for the men who fought at Lexington and Concord. As General Thomas Gage would later remark, the rebels are not the despicable rabble too many have supposed them to be. The colonists had proven themselves to be brave, determined, and capable of standing up to the mighty British Army. The battle at Lexington and Concord marked a turning point in American history as it galvanized public opinion against the British and sparked a wave of patriotism and resistance throughout the colonies. As Samuel Adams would later write, "The die is cast, the people have passed the river, and there is no recrossing. The fate of a nation had been decided, and there was no going back." In the aftermath of the battle, the British Army retreated back to Boston, where they were besieged by the colonists. The Siege of Boston, which lasted from April 19 to March 17, 1776, was a decisive moment in the war, as it ultimately led to the British evacuation of the city. During this time, the Continental Army, led by George Washington, was formed, and the colonists began to organize their resistance against the British. The Battle of Lexington and Concord also had significant repercussions throughout the colonies. News of the battle spread quickly, and it helped to galvanize opposition to British rule. In the months that followed, colonial militias were formed, and the First Continental Congress was convened. The Congress issued a declaration of causes, stating the colonists' grievances against the British and asserting their right to self-governance. The legacy of the Battle of Lexington and Concord can be seen in the many ways it shaped American history. It marked the beginning of the American Revolution, a conflict that would ultimately lead to the formation of the United States as an independent nation. The battle also established the importance of citizen soldiers, who would play a crucial role in defending their communities against external threats. Today, the Battle of Lexington and Concord is remembered as a symbol of American patriotism and resistance against tyranny. The Old North Bridge in Concord, where the battle took place, has become a revered historic site, attracting visitors from around the world. The shot heard round the world, which was fired at the bridge, has become an iconic phrase, symbolizing the spark that ignited the American Revolution. As we reflect on the decline and legacy of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, it's clear that this event had far-reaching consequences for American history. It marked a turning point in the struggle for independence, as the colonists began to assert their rights and challenge British authority. The battle also established the importance of courage, sacrifice, and determination, values that would come to define the American spirit. In conclusion, the Battle of Lexington and Concord was a pivotal event in American history, marking the beginning of the American Revolution and shaping the course of the war. Its legacy can be seen in the many ways it continues to inspire Americans today, from the reverence for historic sites like the Old North Bridge to the enduring values of patriotism, courage, and self-governance. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.